previous trainings, I've talked about the formula for real and lasting change. It's not about pure willpower or motivation because these can go up and down on a daily basis, or sometimes seem to disappear entirely under the stress and the pressure and exhaustion of life. The formula for real lasting change has to start with identity, who you believe you are as a man, the most important roles that you fill in your life, why you believe you're here on this planet and where you're headed. Your true identity gives you meaning and purpose, which then provides you with motivation in the moment to make good choices and choose certain kinds of thoughts and behaviors. It's your who that drives your why. And sometimes, man, especially these days, life just gets overwhelming. Your thoughts, emotions, urges, it just all becomes overpowering, and it can seem like all the odds are against you, like you just can't cope no matter what. And it's in these times that one particular identity may be the only one that gets you through. Now, I want to introduce you to this identity by telling you a true story from World War II. It was November 30th, 1939, and without warning, Soviet Union warplanes came roaring over the city of Helsinki, Finland. And the nation of Finland was about to receive a violent shove right into the midst of World War II. And try to imagine these numbers. The Soviets dropped more than 350 bombs during that first raid. And lots of innocent civilians in Finland died. Entire buildings were instantly turned to dust. And that was just the beginning. 3 hours before that airstrike, more than 450,000 Soviet soldiers, that's 500,000 Soviet soldiers, started marching across the Finnish border. And the Soviet soldiers, they outnumbered the Finnish army like 3-1. But that wasn't the worst of it. The Soviets also commanded more than 6,000 armored tanks and 4,000 aircraft. Finland, meanwhile, had just 32 tanks and 114 aircraft. It was the beginning of what became known as the Winter War. Now, for the people of Finland, there was no question whether some of them would die. The question was whether any of them would survive. That winter was a brutal, brutal year. In January, the temperatures dropped to 40 degrees below zero. And at that time of year, and with Finland being located so far north, the soldiers were on both sides, and both armies were surrounded by darkness almost 18 hours a day. So vastly outnumbered, fighting in a brutally cold darkness, and facing near certain death, the Finnish soldiers relied on a concept that's been part of the Finnish culture for hundreds of years, and it's called Sisu. Now, Sisu is a word that doesn't really have a direct translation, but it refers to the idea of continuing to act even in the face of repeated failures and extreme odds. It's a way of living life by displaying perseverance, even when you've reached the end of your mental and physical capacities. And during that winter war, the extreme mental toughness of Sisu was all the soldiers of Finland had to rely on. Now, the Finns would suffer more than 70,000 casualties during that winter war. But that number would pale in comparison to the 323,000 Soviet casualties during the same time. By the end of winter, the Soviets had seen enough. The Moscow Peace Treaty was signed in March of 1940. In total, the Soviets had attacked with over 900,000 soldiers during the Winter War when they attacked Finland. By the end, 300,000 Finns had managed to fight them to a standstill. Can you imagine? 300,000 Finnish soldiers fought 900,000 Soviets, vastly outnumbered with tanks, with airplanes, with modern weaponry, right? How in the world did the Finnish army do it? While other countries with far greater numbers and resources gave up their freedom and were absorbed into the Soviet Union, Finland was not. How did the tiny Finnish army bring the mighty Soviet Union to its knees? Well, many say it was just sheer grit. But Sisu runs deeper than grit. It's a type of mental toughness that allows you to bear the burden of your responsibilities, whatever those happen to be, with a will and a perseverance that is unbreakable. It's the ability to sustain your action and fight against extreme odds. Sisu extends beyond perseverance. It's what you rely on when you feel like you have nothing left. Now, Joshua Watskin, he's a martial arts competitor and a champion chess player, which is really an interesting combination. He says, at a high level of competition, success often hinges on who determines the field and tone of the battle. It's your mental toughness, your sisu, that determines the tone of your daily battle. Now, a lot of people out there today let their battles define them. They see failure as an indication of who they are. Mentally tough people let their perseverance define them. Not their failure, but their perseverance. They see failure as an event. Failure is something that happens to a person, not who a person is. And that's the attitude that helped carry the people of Finland, their soldiers, through that winter war. Even when they were surrounded by failure, by death, by crazy insurmountable odds, their sisu did not let the soldiers see themselves as failures. Now, we're going to all face moments, days, weeks, months, when our physical and mental resources feel tapped out. There's always going to be times when we're hammered with failure after failure, and we're called on to somehow find a fire within. And even more frequently, there's many moments when we want to achieve something, but it feels like we face incredibly long odds. In all of these moments, what I want to invite you to do is to call on your sisu. When you feel an overwhelming urge to escape to porn or masturbation or other sexual outlets, sisu. When you feel anger and resentment welling up and taking over your mind and your heart, sisu. When you feel shame and unworthiness and that little voice telling you that you're a loser, sisu. When you feel you've tried everything you can to achieve your goal and you still haven't made it, sisu. And when you feel exhausted, hopeless, and completely spent, sisu. Look, we all experience extreme difficulty, overwhelm, failure, but mentally tough people realize that failure is an event, not their identity. They call on their sisu. And remember, the vastly outnumbered and outgunned Finnish soldiers, they weren't alone. Their sisu was enabled and empowered by a loving God. Their sisu was indeed a partnership. So this week, when you're faced with overwhelming thoughts, emotions, or urges, when anger or resentment try to take over, when that ego voice declares you to be a loser or a lost cause, and even when life seems to be too much, remember the soldiers of Finland, the Winter War, and then call upon your sisu.